All right, so hi, Mark. Thank you for meeting with me again.
Yeah, no problem.
It's good to see you back. Yeah. So we're going to talk a little bit about, we're going to go back to last week a little bit and cover some of the stuff we talked about. So from what I gathered from our last meeting, you had some concerns about your weight and you're feeling uncomfortable in your body maybe and you're struggling also with eating out a lot is kind of what it sounded like versus eating at home. And maybe a big one was that you brought up was skipping breakfast. So those are just some of the big ones I wanted to maybe hit on today. So, but I had a question for you first is what would you like the outcomes of the outcome of our meetings to be? Like what are your goals?
That's a good question. I guess ultimately living or eating or having a better lifestyle, eating wise, and then I'd like to lose some weight.
Yeah.
I want it to be good weight, so I guess lower my body fat, and then I guess lastly definitely eat out less. You know, because
for sure.
Yeah.
So what are some ways that maybe you think right now that you know you could improve on for maybe your diet or something that you know right now that maybe is sticking out to you?
Definitely portioning control.
Mm-hmm.
I do love food.
Yeah.
I do love eating a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a hard time saying no, especially a nice home cooked meal.
Okay.
So that's probably to be the first biggest one.
Okay, so for you said portion control. When you do eat at home, what size dinner plates do you have? Like, what kind of plate do you eat on? Is it a pretty large, dinner plate? Okay, so when you are eating at home, do you, if you can recall back, maybe do you see a lot of plate on, when you put food on it, or is it mostly just food covering your whole plate?
Definitely food covering my whole plate.
Food covering your whole plate. So maybe what are some ways that I don't want to tell you have you scoop out a cup every single time.
Right.
Count
my peas.
It might be that way for a while just to get used to something like that. But maybe what are some ways that you think that maybe it could be improved upon?
Probably, I guess using a smaller plate would definitely help for starters.
Do you have those at home? A smaller plate maybe to use? That would definitely be a great idea because then if you're still practicing that fill your plate method, you're filling a smaller area, so you probably won't be overeating. Like we talked about last week, you said you had 2 elk steaks at lunch, so maybe you because if you had a whole plate, maybe a little smaller plate, you'd be putting a little bit less of food on it.
With the plate size too, growing up as a kid, I was always raised you finish your plate.
Mm-hmm.
I probably almost got grounded if I didn't finish my plate.
Okay.
So finishing plate was your number one goal. And then the goal 2 was no leftovers.
No leftovers, okay.
So I'd eat and I was probably pretty full and then I'd just eat some more, my dad give me a hard time and we're oh really, you didn't eat all that food, it's gonna go to waste, or just, give me a hard time about it, so I would finish my food. And
that's probably carried over into adult life too. It's just probably a habit that's been formed over the years.
Yeah.
For sure.
Mm-hmm.
So do you often have leftovers after you eat at home? Do you have to often have leftovers?
No, the goal is no leftovers unless it's I actually am purposely going to make these leftovers.
I get you.
So.
All right, so that's one thing. That's a great thing to talk about. With the you mentioned that you would eat and you'd probably be pretty full and then just keep going because you need to clean your plate. So hunger cues are huge. That's one of those ones you eat when you're hungry, you stop when you're full, and that's a huge thing that can lead to weight gain and overeating is because you're ignoring that cue of I'm okay, I'm good, I'm full, I've reached my limit. Especially if you've been told to clean your plate and that kind of thing for so long, you're probably just going to go right past it and just
basically just ignoring what
you're ignoring what your body's telling you.
Yeah. Okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
So we also talked about breakfast last week, and that you said that you hardly ever eat breakfast anymore, and that you don't have time. Maybe. What are some ways we could improve upon your breakfast eating in the mornings?
Shoot. Well, I guess if I ate more often with smaller meals, breakfast would, I don't know, I'm going on a limb here, but I'm assuming maybe if I ate breakfast in the mornings, would I have as big of a lunch in the afternoon, or would that help kickstart my day? I have no idea. I'm assuming it's they say it's the most important meal of the day.
It definitely is. So when you've last eaten dinner and you go to sleep and you wake up in the morning, you haven't had any food for probably about 8 hours is what the average is, and then even if you're skipping breakfast, you're going even longer. So you might be just dying for like your elk steak, which we talked about last week, by lunchtime, and then you're just gonna be like, feed me. Like I need to get as much as I can, and that's another thing that we said could lead to it's like overeating is you're skipping breakfast. Like even eating a little bit of something in the morning and maybe having like a snack, you're probably not going to eat as much at lunchtime or eat a more normal size amount or portion than you would if you skipped all food from between dinner the night before up until lunch.
That makes sense. That makes sense.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. And so we also talked about eating at home. And so that's a really important thing that you have talked about. You've brought it up multiple times. And so obviously that's important to you. So what are some ways that maybe, do you have any ideas of like maybe why you're eating out so much, or like what we could do to help you to get to eat at home more?
Yeah. Well, I think like I get done with work and it's just like, I'm sure you have these days too, where you're like, I just want to pick something up. I'm tired. I don't want to go to the shop, like the grocery store. Like, let's go home. I'm going to eat on the way home. So I get home and just crash on the couch and watch some TV or just get ready for the evening.
Definitely have those days.
So that's probably my biggest reason why I like eating out. And it's a convenience factor, so I don't have to like prep anything. And I guess that's a bad thing because we talked about that last week where you're like, you don't really know what's going in your food because you're not prepping it.
Yeah.
So I guess like I'd really like to be better in investing in myself as far as like grocery shopping and maybe doing meal prep, like things like that.
There's some great ways. Do you spend a lot of time at the grocery store right now, or is it just kind of like quick in and out kind of a thing?
And now, like I know your basics, like meat, cheese, occasional 6-pack, just little things like that.
Okay.
But if you were to ask me, like, where's this, where's that, in a detail, or like, do you know what this is, I would probably fail.
Yeah. For one thing we could definitely do later on is maybe like take a grocery store tour, walk around, talk about some different things that might be interesting to you. I think spending some more time in a grocery store and maybe learning how to cook some different things would be very beneficial to you, because that maybe it could be a lack of cooking skills for you. Like, do you know how to cook a lot of things? And if you don't, maybe we could figure out how to give you some recipes and some tips so you could be cooking at home more, because that could be a huge block between eating out and eating at home, like the lack of knowing how to cook and knowing how to do things. Like, you might just know how to grill, and it's like, do you know how to like, saute vegetables and get everything ready for a whole meal together?
Okay.
Yeah. And anything else about, meal prepping or grocery store? Like maybe why it would be better for you to plan that way?
Yeah, I guess I had a question like too. So like weightlifting, you see like a lot of like your bodybuilders or people going to competitions, they'll like meal prep for the week and they'll eat more often each day. They'll have more snacks, but it's like the same food. Like, I don't know. Yeah, that would be something good to do. I think it's like a week's worth of food.
Yeah, I've definitely seen that out on different forms of social media. That's probably where you've seen it too, like Facebook and things like that.
Yeah.
So what I've seen people is that's a great way to practice portion controlling, because I don't know if you've seen it, but when they put it in like the specific like colored Tupperware every single day, kind of thing. So they have it pre-portioned, it's in your fridge or in their freezer. All they have to do is pull it out, stick it in the microwave, heat it up, whatever, and go. And then they have a perfectly pre-portioned meal that they know that's not going to go over their amount of calories that they need, which would be a great option too if you would like to try something like that out. Excuse me. The one thing with, you said eating more frequently, it's definitely more beneficial to be, maybe having not, you don't have your 3 square meals a day, like big meals, but what I would suggest, I guess, is if this is interesting to you, and like we talked about before, like you're not eating huge breakfast, like small meals or small snacks in between each meal. So like maybe you're not going to have breakfast, but you snack on a few different healthy things in the morning, and then you have a normal lunch, and you have another healthy snack in between lunch and dinner. And dinner. So that's going to, like we talked about before, tide you over maybe not eating as much at dinner and lunch, like not gorging yourself because you've been deprived of food for so long.
Okay.
And the last thing I wanted to touch on, maybe for some ideas, is you talked about how stress eating, and that's a really important thing I wanted to talk about. Like you said, you are in charge of a lot of people. You have a pretty high stress job, and stress eating is something that happens to you. So, trying to figure out maybe some ways that would improve that, where you wouldn't use food as an outlet, I guess. or reduce it a little bit. So if you have got any ideas as to maybe what you can do for that at work.
I think probably the easiest one would be I have a candy jar on my desk. I can't remember if I told you that.
Yes.
Okay. And I do love candy. So as much as my employees probably wouldn't like it, I could not take away that, but maybe use like a different source of food. You know, like
for sure.
Maybe some nuts or
maybe a piece of fruit or something like that. Yeah, that'd be a great idea.
So I know like I'd be able to positively impact my team members. And if I'm stressed, it'd probably be a lot better for me to have almonds versus, you know.
And you're removing that temptation because it's probably sitting right in front of you on your desk. So you're definitely, you know, removing that temptation. I think that's a great idea. Would be to maybe replace it with some other snacks. Yeah, it might not go over well with your team members, but that could be something where you're like, hey, I'm working on this for me, and I'd appreciate support.
If you guys help me out as well.
Be like, I'm going to have this now. I'm going to get rid of the candy jar, and I want to help you guys out too.
Okay.
Yeah. So those are great things to talk. Those are great topics to talk about. And we had some great ideas. And next week we're going to be talking about different ways to achieve those goals and how to get you to where you want to be.
Okay.
So thank you for meeting with me again.
Yeah,
and I'll see you for our next meeting.
Sounds good. Thank you so much.